listing on the vacation rental site glowed with promise, a beacon of tranquility that seemed to call my name. I'd been grinding through months of deadlines as a freelance graphic designer, my eyes bleary from staring at screens, my shoulders knotted from stress. A week away from the city, somewhere quiet where I could sketch without the hum of urban life, was exactly what I needed. The lake house, as it was called, was a cedar-shingled retreat perched on the edge of Lake Wisteria in northern Michigan. The photos showed a sprawling deck overlooking glassy water, surrounded by dense pines that stretched into the horizon. The interior promised warmth, exposed beams, a stone fireplace, and a loft bedroom with a skylight for stargazing. The host, Margaret, had a 4.9-star rating, with reviews raving about her homemade blueberry muffins and the serene isolation of the property. A perfect escape, one guest wrote. You'll never want to leave. I booked it for late September when the leaves will be turning, imagining crisp mornings with my sketch pad and a mug of coffee. I arrived on a Tuesday, the air sharp with the scent of pine and the faint chill of approaching autumn. The drive had been long, winding through narrow roads flanked by trees that seemed to lean inward, their branches knitting a canopy that blocked out the sun. My GPS had flickered in and out, but I found the gravel path to the lake house without much trouble. The house itself was even more striking than the photos suggested, its dark wood blending into the forest, the lake shimmering like a sheet of obsidian beyond the deck. Margaret had left a key under a potted fern as promised, along with a note in looping handwriting. Welcome, Elise. Muffins in the fridge. Make yourself at home. The muffins were there, wrapped in cellophane, their scent sweet and comforting. I smiled, feeling the tension of the city already slipping away. The first day was idyllic. I spent the morning sketching the lake from the deck, capturing the way the water caught the sunlight in fleeting golden ripples. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional call of a loon or the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I explored the house, running my fingers over the smooth beams, admiring the eclectic decor. Vintage lanterns, woven rugs, a collection of old books on a shelf by the fireplace. The loft bedroom was my favorite, with its slanted ceiling and skylight revealing a sky so clear it felt like I could reach out and touch the stars. That night, I fell asleep to the gentle creak of the house settling. My sketch pad open beside me, already filled with rough outlines of the lake's edge. The unease began on the second night. I was in the loft, sketching by the light of a small lamp, when I heard a sound from below. A faint, deliberate creak, like a footstep on the hardwood. I froze, my pencil hovering over the page. The house was old, I told myself. Old houses make noises. But the sound came again, slower this time, as if someone were testing the floorboards, careful not to make too much noise. I set my sketch pad down and crept to the edge of the loft, peering over the railing into the darkened living room below. The fireplace cast a faint glow, its embers still smoldering, but the room was empty. I waited, holding my breath, but the silence returned, heavy and oppressive. I climbed back into bed, pulling the blankets tight, and convinced myself it was nothing. Just the house, just the wind. The next morning, I found the back door slightly ajar. I was certain I'd locked it. Margaret's note had emphasized securing the doors at night, citing wildlife in the area. I stepped onto the deck, scanning the tree line for signs of animals, but saw nothing. The air felt colder than the day before, and the lake was still, its surface unbroken. I closed the door, double-checked the lock, and tried to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I spent the day sketching again, but my focus was fractured. Every snap of a twig outside made me jump. Every shadow in the corner of my eye felt like a figure just out of sight. By afternoon, I decided to text Margaret, asking if anyone else had access to the property. Her reply was prompt. "Just you, dear. No one else for miles. Enjoy the peace." Her cheerfulness felt forced, but I brushed it off. Maybe I was just city paranoid, unused to the quiet. That night, the noises returned, louder and more distinct. I was in the kitchen heating water for tea when I heard a low, rhythmic tapping from the direction of the deck. It wasn't the wind or a branch. It was too steady, like someone drumming their fingers on glass. I turned off the stove and tiptoed to the living room, my heart thudding. The large windows facing the deck reflected the interior, making it hard to see outside, but I could feel eyes on me, a prickling certainty that someone was watching. I flicked on the outdoor light, expecting to see a raccoon or a deer, but the deck was empty. The tapping stopped the moment the light came on. I stood there, staring into the darkness beyond the glass, my reflection pale and wide-eyed. Nothing moved. I turned off the light and backed away, deciding to sleep with the loft's trapdoor shut. A flimsy barrier, but better than nothing. The fourth day was when things escalated. I woke to find my sketch pad, which I'd left on the bedside table, open on the floor. The pages were untouched, my drawings intact, but it wasn't where I'd left it. I checked the loft's trapdoor. It was still closed, the latch secure. Downstairs, everything seemed normal except for a faint smudge on the living room window, like a handprint pressed against the glass. I wiped it away, my skin crawling, and decided to call Margaret this time. Her voice was warm but oddly distant, as if she were distracted. "Handprints. Could be from cleaning," she said. "I had a crew in before you arrived." I asked about the noises, the open door, but she laughed it off. "The forest plays tricks, Elise. You're not used to the quiet. Why don't you take a walk by the lake? It'll clear your head." Her dismissal only deepened my unease, but I didn't push. Instead, I spent the day outside, sketching from the shore, keeping the house in my peripheral vision. The lake was beautiful, but its stillness felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. That evening, I found the note. I was tidying the kitchen when I noticed a small drawer in the dining table, slightly ajar. Inside was a folded piece of paper yellowed with age, its edges frayed. It wasn't Margaret's handwriting, it was jagged, almost frantic. "Don't trust the shadow by the lake. It watches, it waits." My stomach dropped. I turned the paper over, but there was nothing else. No signature, no date. I checked every drawer, every shelf, looking for more clues, but found nothing. The words looped in my mind as I sat on the couch staring at the windows. The lake was invisible in the dark, but I could feel it out there, vast and silent, hiding something. I texted Margaret about the note, attaching a photo. Her reply took hours. "Old houses have old stories. Probably a prank from a past guest. Ignore it." Her nonchalance felt like a lie, but I had no proof. The fifth night was the worst. I was in the loft, trying to distract myself with a book, when I heard it. A low, guttural hum like a voice muffled by water. It came from outside, near the lake. I turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness, and crept to the skylight. The moon was full, casting a silver glow over the lake. And for a moment, I thought I saw something. A shape, tall and thin, standing at the water's edge. It didn't move like a person. It swayed, as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart hammered as I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but the signal was gone. No bars, no Wi-Fi. The house felt like a trap, its walls closing in. I locked the loft's trapdoor and pushed the bedside table against it, my hands shaking. The hum returned, closer now, just outside the house. It wasn't human. It was too deep, too resonant, like the lake itself was singing. I stayed awake, clutching a kitchen knife I'd brought upstairs, listening as the sound circled the house, pausing at the windows, then moving on. At one point, I heard a faint scrape against the cedar siding, like nails dragging across wood. I didn't dare look. Dawn broke, and the noises stopped. Exhausted, I climbed down from the loft, knife still in hand, and checked every room. The house was untouched, but the back door was open again, wide enough for someone to slip through. I didn't hesitate. I packed my bags, threw them into my car, and drove to the nearest town, a gas station with spotty Wi-Fi. I called Margaret, my voice shaking with anger. "Someone was here last night," I said. "The door was open and I heard things. What's going on?" Her tone was sharp now, no trace of warmth. "You're imagining things, Elise. The lake house is safe. If you are uncomfortable, you're welcome to leave." I hung up, furious, and contacted the rental platform, uploading photos of the note, the handprint, the open door. They promised to investigate and refunded my stay, but I didn't care about the money. I just wanted answers. At the gas station, I overheard locals talking about Lake Wisteria, their voices low. "People see things out there," one said. "Shadows that don't belong." I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know more. I drove home, the lake house fading in my rearview mirror. But the memory of that shadow by the lake clung to me. I haven't sketched since, and I can't look at water without feeling it watching me back. The listing for the desert bungalow caught my eye during a late-night scroll through a vacation rental app. I'd been teaching history at a community college for years, and the grind of grading papers and lecturing to half-interested students had worn me down. I needed a break, somewhere far from the fluorescent lights and endless emails. The bungalow, tucked in the high desert of southern Utah, promised solitude in stark beauty. The photos showed a low adobe-style house with terracotta tiles, surrounded by red rock formations and sparse, sun-bleached sagebrush. The description was poetic, a sanctuary for the soul, where the desert whispers its secrets. The host, Clara, had a perfect 5.0 star rating, with reviews praising her thoughtfulness and the property's otherworldly calm. "You will feel like the only person on Earth," one guest wrote. That was exactly what I wanted. A week to read, hike, and clear my head. I booked it for early October when the desert heat would be softening, and packed my car with books, a journal, and a pair of sturdy hiking boots. The drive to the bungalow was a journey into emptiness. The highway stretched through miles of cracked earth and jagged cliffs, the horizon shimmering with heat. My phone lost signal an hour out and the GPS flickered, but Clara's directions, emailed in advance, were precise. Turn left at the rusted window. Follow the dirt track past the Joshua tree with a broken arm. When I arrived, the bungalow looked like it had grown from the desert itself, its ochre walls blending with the landscape. The air was dry and warm, carrying the faint scent of creosote. Clara had left a key under a clay pot by the door, along with a note in neat, slanted handwriting. "Welcome, Daniel. Fresh lemonade in the fridge. Enjoy the silence." I stepped inside, the cool air a relief after the drive. The interior was simple but inviting, Whitewashed walls, woven rugs, a wooden table with a vase of dried wildflowers. The windows framed the desert like paintings, all rust and gold under a cloudless sky. The first day was everything I'd hoped for. I spent the morning hiking a nearby trail, my boots crunching on the gravelly earth. The silence so complete, I could hear my own breathing. I jotted notes in my journal about the rock formations, their shapes like ancient ruins under the sun. Back at the bungalow, I sipped Clara's lemonade, tart and sweet, and read by the window, the desert stretching endlessly beyond. That night I slept deeply, lulled by the stillness my dreams filled with the red cliffs I'd seen earlier. The second night, though, something shifted. I was reading in the living room, a biography of a 19th century explorer, when I heard a faint scratching sound, like sandpaper dragged across stone. It came from outside, near the back wall of the bungalow. I set the book down, listening. The desert was supposed to be quiet, but this wasn't the wind or a scurrying animal. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. I stepped onto the small patio, flipping on the outdoor light. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the sandy ground and a few scraggly bushes, but nothing else. The scratching stopped the moment the light came on. I scanned the horizon, the cliffs looming like silent sentinels, and went back inside, locking the door behind me. Old houses, old desert, I told myself. Things settle, things move. The next morning I found tracks in the sand outside the back door. They weren't animal prints, not the delicate paws of a coyote or the claw marks of a lizard. These were long, shallow impressions, like someone had dragged their feet through the dirt, circling the bungalow before veering toward the cliffs. I followed them for a few yards, but they faded into the hard-packed earth. Uneasy, I texted Clara, asking if anyone else might be around. Hikers, neighbors, maintenance workers. Her reply was quick. No one out there but you, Daniel. The desert's all yours. Maybe just critters exploring. Her tone was cheerful, but it didn't ease the knot in my chest. I spent the day hiking farther from the bungalow, hoping distance would clear my mind. But I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone watching from the rocks. That evening, I noticed something odd in the kitchen. The vase of wildflowers on the table had been moved, just slightly, its shadow no longer aligned with the faint dust ring beneath it. I hadn't touched it. I was sure of that. I checked the doors and windows. All were locked, just as I'd left them. My journal, which I'd left open on the couch, was closed. A pen I didn't recognize tucked between its pages. It was a cheap ballpoint, the kind you'd find in a motel, with a logo too faded to read. I set it on the table, my skin prickling. Someone had been inside. I called Clara this time, my voice tight. Has anyone else been in the bungalow? I asked. Things are moving. Her laugh was light, almost dismissive. Oh, Daniel, the desert can play tricks. Maybe you bumped the vase without realizing. I haven't been by, and there's no one else with a key. She suggested I take a walk at sunset, said the colors would soothe my nerves. I hung up, frustrated. Her explanations felt like deflections, and the pen wasn't mine. I searched the bungalow, checking under furniture, behind curtains, even in the small closet by the bathroom. Nothing else was out of place, but the feeling of being watched was unshakable. On the fourth night, I found the map. It was tucked inside a book on the shelf, a worn copy of a desert ecology guide, its pages yellowed and dog-eared. The map was hand-drawn, ink smudged as if it had been folded and unfolded countless times. It showed the bungalow and the surrounding cliffs, with a jagged line leading to a spot marked with an X, labeled The Hollow. A note in the margin, in the same hurried script, read, "It comes at night. Don't follow." My pulse quickened. I photographed the map and texted it to Clara, demanding an explanation. Her reply came hours later, after I'd nearly given up. "Just an old guest doodle, I'm sure. People get creative out there. Toss it and enjoy your stay." Her words felt hollow, like she was hiding something. That night, the scratching returned, louder, closer, now accompanied by a low, keening sound, like wind trapped in a cave. It wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was under the floor. I froze, my book slipping from my hands. The bungalow had no basement, just a crawl space, according to the listing. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it through the living room window, hoping to catch whatever was out there. The beam caught something, a flicker of movement near the cliffs, too quick to make out. I locked myself in the bedroom, shoving a chair under the doorknob, and sat on the bed, the flashlight in one hand, my phone in the other. The signal was still gone, and the keening grew louder, rising and falling like a mournful song. It stopped just before dawn, leaving the silence heavier than before. The fifth day, I decided to investigate the map. I couldn't stay in the bungalow another night without answers. I hiked toward the cliffs, the map clutched in my hand, the X burned into my mind. The desert was oppressively still, the sun beating down, my shadow sharp against the red earth. The trail led to a narrow canyon, its walls steep and smooth like they'd been carved by something other than wind. At the end was a shallow cave, the Hollow. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the walls etched with strange spiraling symbols that looked older than the desert itself. In the center was a pile of stones, arranged in a deliberate spiral, and beside it, a single object, a pen, identical to the one from my journal. My blood ran cold. I backed out, my boots slipping on the loose gravel, and ran back to the bungalow, my heart pounding. That night, I didn't sleep. The keening returned, now inside the walls, circling the bungalow like a predator. I sat in the bedroom, the chair still under the doorknob, listening as the sound grew closer, more insistent. Then a new noise, a soft, deliberate knock at the front door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The knock came again, slower, heavier, followed by a voice, faint and rasping. "Daniel." My name, spoken like a whisper from the desert itself. I clutched the flashlight, my knuckles wide, and waited for dawn. The knocking stopped, but the keening continued, fading only as the first light crept through the window. I packed at sunrise, throwing my books and clothes into my bag, the map and pen left on the table like evidence. I called Clara from the road, my voice shaking with rage. "Something's out there," I said. It knew my name. Her silence was long, heavy. "The desert has stories," she finally said. "You shouldn't have gone to the Hollow." I hung up, furious, and contacted the rental platform, sending them the map, the photos, everything. They refunded my stay and promised to investigate, but I didn't care. I drove home, the desert shrinking in my rear view, but the sound of my name and that rasping voice followed me. Locals at a diner on the way back spoke of the desert in hushed tones, of things that linger in the cliffs, things that know you before you know them. I don't hike anymore, and I can't sleep without checking the locks twice. The desert doesn't whisper secrets, it calls your name. The listing for the coastal cottage on the Oregon coast felt like a lifeline. I was a novelist, burned out from a grueling book tour and a looming deadline for my next manuscript. The city noise, horns, sirens, constant chatter of crowds, it drained me, and I cottage was a weathered clapboard house perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, its photos capturing gray waves crashing against jagged rocks, and a cozy interior with a wood stove and bookshelves. The host, Evelyn, described it as a haven for dreamers, where the ocean sings you to sleep. Her 4.8-star rating and reviews praising the cottage's solitude and charm sealed the deal. Perfect for writers, one guest wrote. You'll feel the story pour out of you. I booked it for mid-November, picturing stormy nights and pages filled with new ideas, and drove out with my laptop, a stack of notebooks, and a desperate need for quiet. The road to the cottage twisted through dense fog, the ocean a distant roar beyond towering pines. My car's headlights barely cut through the mist, and the GPS gave up 10 miles out. But Evelyn's directions, scrawled in an email, guided me, right at the driftwood sign, left at the crooked mailbox. The cottage emerged like a ghost from the fog, its white paint peeling, windows glowing faintly from a lamp left on. The air smelled of salt and damp earth, and the waves below were relentless, a rhythm that felt alive. Evelyn's note waited on the kitchen table, written in elegant cursive. Welcome, Sarah. Tea in the cupboard, firewood by the stove. Let the ocean inspire you. A tin of chamomile tea sat beside it, a thoughtful touch. I unpacked, lit the wood stove, and settled into a creaky armchair with my notebook, the sound of the sea already loosening the knot in my chest. The first day was blissful. I wrote for hours, words flowing as I watched the ocean churn under a slate-gray sky. The cottage was small but warm, with scuffed wooden floors, a quilt-draped sofa, and a tiny bedroom tucked under the eaves. I explored the cliff path, the wind tugging at my coat, and found a weathered bench facing the water. It felt like the edge of the world. That night, I fell asleep to the waves, my notebook open to a half-finished chapter, the story finally taking shape. On the second night, the noises started. I was typing in the living room, the wood stove crackling, when a faint thump came from the attic above. It was soft, like something heavy shifting, not the creak of an old house settling. I paused, listening, but the sound didn't repeat. The cottage was isolated. No neighbors, no roads nearby. So I chalked it up to the wind or a loose shingle. Still, I checked the bedroom door, which led to a narrow staircase to the attic. It was locked, as Evelyn's email had noted. Attic's off limits, just storage. I pushed the unease aside and went back to writing. But the quiet felt heavier now, the ocean's roar almost mocking. The next morning, I found the kitchen window unlatched. I was certain I'd checked it the night before. Evelyn's note had warned about securing windows against coastal storms. I closed it, the latch stiff but functional, and scanned the cliff outside. The fog was thick, swallowing the horizon, but nothing seemed amiss. I texted Evelyn, asking if anyone else might have been by. A cleaner, a handyman. Her reply was swift. Just you, Sarah. No one else comes up there. Check the latch. The salt air can loosen them. Her explanation made sense, but the window's position, facing the cliff's sheer drop, meant no one could reach it without climbing. I shook off the doubt and spent the day writing. Though my focus wavered, my eyes darting to the windows as the fog thickened. That night, the thump returned, louder, deliberate, followed by a faint scraping, like wood dragging across wood. It came from the attic, directly above my bed. I sat up, heart pounding, and stared at the ceiling. The sound stopped, but the silence that followed was worse, heavy with anticipation. I grabbed my phone and shone its flashlight at the bedroom door. The lock held firm, but a faint draft brushed my face, carrying a musty smell, like damp cloth and old paper. I texted Evelyn again, describing the noises. Her reply came hours later, at 3 a.m. Old houses groan in the wind. Nothing to worry about. Try the tea. It'll help you sleep. Her casual tone grated, and I couldn't shake the feeling she was brushing me off. On the fourth day, I found the book. It was on the living room shelf, tucked between a bird-watching guide and a faded romance novel. A thin, leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and stained. Inside, the pages were filled with tight, frantic handwriting, dated 3 years earlier. The attic watches, one entry read, "It moves at night, and the waves are loudest. Don't open the door." Another page had a sketch of the cottage with an arrow pointing to the attic, and the words, "It's not empty." My stomach twisted. I photographed the journal and sent the images to Evelyn, demanding answers. Her response was curt. "Guests leave strange notes sometimes. It's nothing. Burn it if it bothers you." Her dismissal felt like a slap, and the journal's words burned in my mind. I checked the attic door again. The lock was rusted but intact. Still, I wedged a chair under the knob for good measure. That evening, the fog lifted, revealing a blood-red sunset over the ocean. I tried to write, but the journal's warnings gnawed at me. Around midnight, the noises returned. Not just thumps now, but footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing the attic floor. I froze, my laptop screen casting a pale glow. The footsteps stopped directly above me, followed by a low, guttural hum, like a voice trapped in a throat. It wasn't the wind or the house. It was alive, intentional. I grabbed a fireplace poker and crept to the bedroom door, my hands trembling. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the walls. And then, a sharp knock on the attic door. I stifled a scream, backing away. The knock came again, slower, heavier, followed by a whisper. My name, drawn out like a hiss. "Sarah." I didn't sleep. I sat on the sofa, poker in hand, staring at the bedroom door until dawn. The noises stopped as the sky lightened, but the cottage felt tainted, its warmth replaced by a creeping dread. At first light, I searched the attic staircase, looking for signs of tampering. The lock was untouched, but a faint scratch mark ran along the doorframe, fresh enough to show pale wood beneath the paint. I called Evelyn, my voice shaking with fury. "There's something in the attic," I said. It said my name. Her pause was long, her tone cold when she finally spoke. "You're stressed, Sarah. The ocean can sound like voices. Leave if you're scared, but there's nothing up there." I hung up, her words ringing hollow. I decided to leave, but not before answers. I found a rusty crowbar in the shed, heart pounding, pried open the attic door. The staircase was narrow, the air thick with dust and that same musty smell. At the top, the attic was small, cluttered with boxes and old furniture. But in the corner was a mattress, stained and sagging, with a pile of clothes beside it. Modern clothes, a hoodie and jeans, not storage. A notebook lay open, filled with the same frantic handwriting as the journal downstairs. "It knows you're here. It waits until you sleep." My blood ran cold. I snapped photos, then fled downstairs, grabbing my bags. As I packed, a shadow moved outside the window. A tall, thin figure, too quick to see clearly, vanishing into the fog that had returned. I drove to a motel in the nearest town, my hand shaking on the wheel. At a coffee shop with Wi-Fi, I contacted the rental platform, uploading the photos, the journal, the attic's contents. They refunded my stay and promised to investigate, but I needed more. I asked locals about the cottage, their faces tightening. "People hear things up there," an older man said, stirring his coffee. "Voices, footsteps, Some say it's the cliff drawing things in. I didn't ask what things meant. I drove home, the ocean's roar fading but never leaving my ears. My manuscript remains unfinished. I can't write without hearing that hiss of my name. The cottage's charm was a lie, and whatever lived in that attic wasn't human. I check my locks every night, and I'll never trust a glowing review again.